Thank you for attending our webinar. We are recording this, so it will be available on YouTube for others to see in the future. I'm delighted to introduce our presenter this evening. It's Michael Shepard is the General Counsel for Professional Educators of Tennessee. He attended Morehead State University as an ROTC cadet and then moved on to Salmon P. Chase Law School, where he earned honors in criminal trial practice and Dean's List designation. He has been an insurance executive and general counsel, serving large carriers in London and throughout the USA, as well as representing the industry in Washington, D.C. He has been a lawyer for 33 years, managing law partner, top paralegal institutions, and is admitted to practice in Ohio and Tennessee and before all Ohio and Tennessee courts. He earned national recognition for his legal service to veterans, appearing on CNN, NBC Nightly News, who was just recently at our office, and Good Morning America. Mr. Shepard is passionately dedicated to the empathetic, knowledgeable advocacy of its members and the teaching profession. And without further ado, I will change the presenter to Mike Shepard as he discusses what to do about reprimands.
Welcome everyone to this segment of the LawTalk series, which is concerning reprimands, avoiding and handling them effectively. All of us are familiar with that term, reprimand, but it's always good to start off sharing exactly what we're talking about, and that means we go to the dictionary. What is a reprimand? It is a formal rebuke by a person in authority. It can take many forms in the state of Tennessee for an educator. As all of you know, many of the reprimands are governed by local policy, but I think the common denominator that we need to start off with is, why is it important and why do you need to worry about it? First of all, when I talk to teachers throughout the state and administrators, they are very concerned about a reprimand affecting their evaluation and their security. They believe at times that some of the reprimands are incorrect, not right on point, or it's just a surprise. And oftentimes we find that that surprise is a miscommunication many times. Sometimes it's not. If it is not a miscommunication, we'll talk about that. If it is a miscommunication or incorrect, we'll talk about that as well. But the other reason our teachers and educators worry about reprimands is, it affects your paycheck, your salary, your ability to provide for yourself and your family, of course. It may affect your career. It may even affect your position with your district. It could result in a recommendation for termination or suspension. Oftentimes we see teachers very concerned about receiving a reprimand because they believe it is the first in the line of effort to separate them from their job. In other words, they don't have a good relationship with their superior, and they feel like they're being isolated and possibly set up for removal from their position. If you combine some questionable evaluations, some disagreements with the person doing your evaluation, it's very easy to become very worried about a reprimand. But there are ways to handle reprimands that can ease that concern, and some of the ways that you can do that we will talk about. But let's first talk about the areas of concern. Now, this is taken from Tennessee Code Annotated 495501. The main areas for separation from a position, an education position, is outlined, and these are the ones where you really need to kind of focus on where these reprimands are coming from, what's motivating them, is there documentation for the reprimand, and is it in effect being handled correct. Secondly, you want to make sure that the local policies are being followed and that you're getting the due process that you may or may not be entitled to in your district. Reprimands are just that, reprimands. They are not, some stay in your file for an extended period of time. Some are removed after a year. Some districts give you certainly an outlet for disagreeing with the reprimand. But the 5 areas that you see in front of you now, incompetence, inefficiency, neglect of duty, unprofessional conduct, and insubordination, are outlined in the statute, not as reprimands, but sources of behavior that justify separation or termination. Now, the reason I put those on the screen is because the most reprimands that I see as general counsel, and the ones I work with most of all with the person that's been reprimanded, is the last 3: neglect of duty, unprofessional conduct, and insubordination. So if you look at the reasons in our statute that for being evaluated negatively, that would lead you to think that if you are concerned about not performing well, that a reprimand or a series of reprimands in these areas would be of concern for you. So do we have any questions so far as to why these are areas of concern, or any particular questions to clarify what we're covering tonight? Any issues at all?
We have one question. It says, if I am reprimanded, should I immediately call the PAT office on that?
Well, absolutely, and that is on one of our slides as the first thing to do when you are reprimanded. Many times teachers, they, for some reason, they want to work through it completely on their own. Other times they want to talk with other teachers. They discuss it, and they may not really, grasp the effectiveness that can come from advice from professional educators. Our group is made up of seasoned educators, lawyers, and we see a lot of these. So we're much better positioned to give you advice and direction. So, and we're going to talk about that as we talk about the ways to prevent reprimands and the way to handle them when they're when they come up. So, any other questions?
I think as a teacher, one thing you always ask yourself if you are getting reprimanded is, am I being reprimanded because they want to correct me so I can be a better teacher, or am I being reprimanded as a part of due process because they're going after my job?
Yeah, that's well said, and that's what we hear a lot of. And if it's done the right way, and the leader that is involved in the issuing the reprimand covers it in such a way that says, look, you're deficient in these areas. It manifested itself in this area to the extent that I feel like I have to document it. We are not, I want to work with you. And what you hope to find before these reprimands come down is a good, rock-solid relationship of communication with the superior and the teacher. And that means good dialogue, good evaluations that are meaningful, questions by the teacher as to how they can improve before it converts to a situation where a reprimand is issued. So yes, that is the main concern that we receive as a trade association is, what is this about? What's the intent? So if there's trust, and trust takes many definitions, as you know. Trust, I'll give you $5, you'll give it back to me tomorrow. Trust as far as depending on people to do their job. Trust your superior that their intentions are honorable. Oftentimes we find that the superior is trying to implement policy. Other times we see administrators who have maybe not thought through the reprimand and maybe they don't have all the facts. So that's where it becomes very important to respond calmly and coolly and proactively instead of becoming very emotional and possibly overreacting. So I'm going to move on to the next area, which is avoidance. Is there any other questions out there before I move on? Okay. If there is, we'll catch them at the end of this next segment. But avoidance of reprimand, as far as what I have learned in my position and what I've learned from being part of PET and talking with teachers all over the state and in some cases all over the country, is you can avoid a lot of negative documentation in your personnel file or in the file that they keep locally by communicating effectively. And that means if you make a mistake, or you think people are going to perceive you made a mistake, it might be a good idea to talk to them about it before they convert it into written form. If you were supposed to be at a meeting at a certain time and you were late, if you may have had an incident in your classroom, I mean, deal with it head on. I've always felt like it's better to, face the situation, assess it, and ask for help early on. I think that avoids some reprimands, not all. I mean, you can do that in some situations and it will not work. But so that includes follow-up with the people affected, which generates preemption of the reprimand. Try to have good interactive evaluations with your director of schools or your principal, or if you're a principal, same would apply as far as dealing with your director of school. Have good interactive evaluations so you're both on the same page as to how you're doing, where your deficiencies are, and make sure, force them to follow the law as far as the evaluations are concerned. Make sure you have good, solid pre-conferences and post-conference conferences to the evaluations. And again, if you feel that you're getting into a situation where you're going to be negatively construed, or if there's an issue that comes up that you're just uncomfortable with, and there's not much else you can do about it, document everything that goes on during that period of time. It's probably not a good idea to talk among your colleagues to the extent that it becomes a rumor mill. That's a very private situation if there is a reprimand issued, and it's always a good idea, if you're going to talk about it, talk about the person who reprimanded you. Teamwork, we find that the teachers and administrators that espouse teamwork and usually generate a sense of strong, positive leadership and working together. And we see more of this, well, let me talk to you about this. Come over here, let me coach you. Let me kind of tell you what I think you're doing. If you get a very procedure black letter law leaders, sometimes they will just go back to their office and type up whatever they feel they need to do. We find it's much better for administrators to work with teachers, elevate them, and show them how to be better. And reprimands are not really a tool, a positive tool for long-term improvement. They are possibly needed in certain situations, but in our opinion, they should not be heavily relied upon to guide people and teachers. So any questions on this segment about how to avoid reprimands? Anyone at all?
We don't have any questions, but please type them in the question bar. We'd be glad to take them when we get to the next segment.
Okay, responding to the reprimand. On the top of the list is call us. Just as the person that asked the question before, it's a very good idea to give us a call so that we can understand the substance of the reprimand, you know, what your background is, what the background of the person that is issuing the reprimand, whether it's a legitimate reprimand or whether it calls into question facts, and how to represent yourself and have PED help you represent yourself in a way that possibly could at least add your side of the story to the file. Again, we go back to how many reprimands have you received, what's the intention of the administrator, and you know, what the environment is where you are in the school system. Just like any business, there's good and there are not so good environments that are not quite as professional as you'd like it to be. But once you get the reprimand, don't lose sight of the fact that you're a professional and you're going to deal with it calmly and you're going to deal with it straightforwardly. You're not going to communicate with people in your classroom, or certainly not in front of children or your students, and you're going to deal with it based upon facts. If you make a visceral reaction to it, if it's anger or if it's, well, here they come again, they're after me, well, that's going to shut the communication channels down, and it's going to result in a more difficult time for you. Now, what do you do if they just aren't true? And the administrator has bad information? The best thing to do is to document that and to respond effectively. It doesn't mean write 4 or 5 pages. It means to draw an outline of the facts. That's what I always suggest. Where did all this come from? If it's not true, diplomatically and professionally outline where the reprimand is incorrect and respond with a teamwork approach. For example, I know your job is to give me feedback. I know your job is to help me, but I would like to point out to you this is what actually occurred. And you'll find that most folks will not go throw their hands up and go, oh, I made a horrible mistake, let me take that out of your file. But it does happen. Most importantly is that your side of the story is known and that you've tried to work with the administrator toward becoming a better teacher, or to become a better, to just have a better relationship with the person who just sent you the reprimand. Oftentimes, if it's true, I suggest an action plan. Again, reprimands are not suspensions and they're not terminations, but action plans show that you've taken the initiative, that you've recognized the mistake or the reason for improvement, and that you're buying in to your career and you're listening to what's being said. Always consider if there's been a lot in the past, that's not a good sign, but it can be dealt with. We've dealt with teachers that have had 2 or 3, and even as many as 4. And we need to find out why. Why is that happening? Is it a misunderstanding? Is it not? Is it an administrator who just who has lost touch with your position and what you're responsible for and what you're doing day to day? All of those things can combine to make just a huge void in teamwork where everyone is working on different things and nobody's coming together toward one goal, and that is to improve the level of education in the school. Ask yourself, how is your relationship with your superior? Are you responsible for that relationship? Yes. Are you totally responsible? No. The administrator should try to reach out to you, grow the relationship, build enough experiences, open experiences with you that there is trust and there is not the suspicion that this is going to be worse before it gets better. So any questions from anyone regarding how to respond to the reprimand, or any experiences you've had personally or know of where responding to the reprimand a certain way did or did not work?
We have one question. Joe in Franklin wants to know, how do we document? What's the best procedure for documenting the case and what's happening to protect yourself? How's the best way to document?
Well, I think one is open and one is closed. The closed documentation is basically writing down things as they happen. If someone comes into your classroom and says something to you, write it down, the time and date, and who was present, and certainly the substance of what was said. The open way to document is always through email communication, which you have to be very careful with emails. I've been in the business world, and I still say it holds true for educators. Be very careful with emails. What you say in those emails you can't take back, and oftentimes you're far better off going to just see the person. They've done studies to show that people just get irritated by the tone of an email if it's not done right. But if you need to document something to protect yourself from being misunderstood or accused of doing something you didn't do, then carefully draft an email, think about it, sleep on it. I always say sleep on it for a night and decide what you want to do. Ask yourself if you would want to get that email. You don't want to get a terse response from anyone. So I always call it closed and open documentation that I find very important.
Would this be an area in which you possibly could help a member send in a correct official email to a superior?
Absolutely, and even helping the educator draw up a written hard copy too in response to the reprimand, email or written. So yes, most definitely, and we would want to ask a lot of questions, and we deal with a lot of school districts. Each one's different, so getting to know the teacher a little bit up front is important. A little interaction, dialogue between us and the teacher, and their feelings and their observations. What's going on in the school? Is it a good environment? Is it going on with other people? Is there just a breakdown in morale? Or did they just make a mistake?
Thank you.
I'm going to move on if there's no other questions in that area. In into what to do. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. Is there any other questions pending out there?
That's all for now.
Okay. What to do? Very simply put, respond in writing if needed and without emotion or defensiveness. And that's hard to do sometimes when you're unjustly accused of something. Let's just say you have been unjustly accused. It's still a good idea to be objective and factual and not become defensive so that you give them reason to believe that there's going to be more problems in the future. I can't imagine where a reprimand would not require some response in writing, even if you just say, thank you for this, I realize the problem, and I've done this to correct it or whatever. But I would say most, if not all, reprimands require a response in writing. In that, we go through it with our teachers and we basically help them articulate the response in order to guide the author of the reprimand to a correct conclusion, correct any wrong facts, information, but do it in a way that's very respectful, not in an argumentative way. I found that it never works in any type of reprimand. You just have to, but yeah, again, we understand that that's easier said than done, and that's why it's a good idea to call us. We can rein you in certain areas, and we can give you guidance to avoid being perceived the wrong way. Provide documentation of your situation and what you feel supports your position. But again, that has to be presented in a positive way. You may have missed this. Here is the attached document. Let's go over it together to see if it might change your mind or indicates other information. And finally, what to do that I think is very positive is a very personal effort on both parties' part to sit down and discuss it so that the battle lines aren't drawn. Anytime you put something in writing and you send it back and forth to the person and you're not agreeing with it, you're not going to be able to show them the emotion you have for your job, which is sometimes you need to show the passion and your commitment to the job. That doesn't always come across in a writing. And possibly the writing from the person writing the reprimand, they didn't mean to come across quite as harsh. So restricting it to writing is not a good idea. The personal relationship is very important. Body language, adding parentheticals, examples, just getting to know the person more will help avoid problems in the future and solve the current problem. Any questions on what to do?
Yes, we have a couple more questions.
After receiving a reprimand? Sure.
I have a question. How does a reprimand differ from a conference of concern, or are they considered the same thing?
A conference of concern, I equate that with at the same level as a reprimand. When I am asked to attend a conference of concern, I think the same methods need to be used. Does the person asking the question have a particular example that they could share with us? Where
it'll take them a second to type that out.
Conference. Yeah, I think a conference of concern, I think, is used interchangeably. I don't know if anybody can correct me out there if they'd like to, but I believe it's the we need to use the same methodology.
Okay, I have another question. Especially if reprimands get emotional, shouldn't the documentation and the conferencing with other people be done outside of the school? How do you keep from getting emotional on the school grounds?
Well, I think it's always a good idea to meet on neutral ground. Unfortunately, in school environments, there's not a lot of that available unless you go off-site. You know, I think maybe meeting in the administrator's office is mostly the way it's done. Education is still steeped in a lot of tradition, and the hierarchical method is used oftentimes, and you're called into the office. But if you generate the meeting, I would say, you know, can we talk in my classroom? Can we meet in the lunchroom? Can we meet somewhere else just to you know, talk this through and kind of disarm the situation instead of having a top-down perspective and a defensiveness that may set in. So,
so if I have a problem that I need to contact legal help at PET, is it okay to call you after school, and should I use my home email?
very good question. Yeah, you really don't want to use the school email. Use your home phone and your cell phone. The reason is obvious. It's for confidentiality. And when you talk, if you are talking to an attorney rather than one of our staff members, you know, of course, that's attorney-client privilege. And we want to maintain that privilege, but we always recommend using private emails, phone calls to us, and basically at home. We have people that are working late every day and early every day, so teachers are pretty tied up during the day, so we accommodate their schedule.
One of our attendees points out that we could meet on an off day like a Saturday, and I just want to confirm that yes, we do meet with teachers on Saturdays.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, you know, we're in the middle of the state. Our home office is here, but we meet with folks on Saturday, the weekends, evenings, whatever needs to be done. Within reason, of course, you know, if you have a conference of concern set at 9 o'clock and we're hearing about it, you know, there's logistic issues, of course, but usually we're pretty good at getting back to the teachers quickly, and certainly on Saturdays, on weekends we do that all the time. Anything else? Let's talk about what not to do, and again, we've kind of touched on this before, but again, when you're in the throes of an emotional situation, or you just don't agree with it, or it's a surprise, we don't want to overreact. That's always something that you're sorry for later. Again, don't communicate the problem or discuss with peers. I've talked to more administrators that get angry about gossip channels or hearing about the problem through the grapevine rather than directly from the person that's most affected. And I've got do not overreact on there twice, which, again, I believe it's very, very important. Do not overreact. Think about what you're doing. Go home. You know, discuss it with your family, but for sure, go over it in your mind be ready, come up with an action plan to deal with it. And do not create a battleground, and by that I mean this is going to turn into a huge disagreement. If you remember not to create a battleground, you'll start thinking in terms of how to turn this into, although very difficult, a constructive situation, an opportunity to know the administrator better, an opportunity to grow as a teacher. And if you are misjudged or misevaluated, an opportunity to, gain the respect of your administrator by seeing that you're able to conduct yourself and disagree with them in an effective way. They say the most successful marriages are not measured by agreements between the spouses, but it's how they argue. So you as a teacher, with our help, we can argue. We don't want to call it that, but that's what it is. We just don't agree with what they've done. So any comments or questions on what not to do or any kind of real-life situations that have come up with anyone? Okay. As we conclude the presentation, we'd be happy to take any emails from the audience. My email is on there as well, and you can call us, contact us, follow up on any questions with this webinar. And thank you for attending, and let us know where we can help, when and where we can help.
Thank you.